Hi, and welcome to Acton Agenda. This is a show about the upcoming Board of Selectmen meeting, which will be on December 5th at 7 p.m. in room 204 of Town Hall. With me today is Selectman Chingsung Chang. We're here to talk about some of the agenda items that the Selectmen will be discussing and debating on the upcoming Monday. So welcome, Chingsung.
Hi.
Glad to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
So why don't we talk a little first about our public hearings.
Sure. So the public hearings this week are going to be on sort of a discussion on natural gas alternatives. This is really motivated by Acton's continued priority on sort of green energy and really being environmentally friendly, that kind of thing. It's been a priority here in town for us, and we think it's done pretty well for us, and so we're going to be having a discussion on that. I don't know if you want to add anything, Steve.
I think one of the things that the Green Acton may be asking the board in part of this discussion, and a lot of it relates to natural gas and its kind of impact on greenhouse emissions, et cetera, is that maybe asking that when somebody comes to the land use department to apply for a gas permit, that we as a town give them some educational information about natural gas and some alternatives to natural gas that they may want to consider, because as many know, the greenhouse effect is quite serious in the world today, and I think Green Acton would like to encourage people to think about alternatives, and they would like the town to encourage people to think about alternatives as well. We also, kind of before we get into regular selectmen's business, we have a couple public hearings. One is a liquor license transfer.
Right.
At 100 Powder Mill Road, which is in the where the Stop and Shop and those stores are. So this is mainly a straightforward transfer to a new owner. So it shouldn't be too much of an issue as far as I know.
Yep. And sort of one of the other two main topics that is probably going to take more time this week is going to be the discussion about our tax rate,
right.
Which is what the tax classification hearing is. It's really going to be focused on sort of how we set the tax rate, whether it's split, whether it's going to be the same tax rate, whether or not, Acton has historically kept a single tax rate because most of our property is residential, and so it's just practically a little bit easier. But that's what we'll be around for.
And that's something, statutorily we have to, the board has to do every year, because we can't set our tax rate until the board has this hearing. So as you say, they have to decide what is called a residential factor, which means, are we going to have a split tax rate where residents pay a certain tax rate and commercial industrial pay a higher rate. Traditionally, as you said, we have had a single tax rate, and primarily it's because only about 11% of the parcels in town are commercial industrial, and we've been trying to work on encouraging more economic development. So it's been felt that the single tax rate would be helpful in that regard. The board has a couple other things they have to decide, whether there'd be a discount for open space. We have never done that before. Whether we'd give a small commercial exemption, which is a exemption for small businesses of under $1 million and I think under 10 employees, and then a residential exemption, which basically is would actually create a split tax rate in the residential sector, meaning that secondary homes, if there are secondary homes, would pay a higher tax rate than primary homes. So those are four things the board has to decide. Traditionally, they've decided on the single tax rate and not done the other three things I've just mentioned. The assessors will be there. They'll have a lot of data to walk through so that the board can make an informed decision on that.
Yep, and so that's probably going to take a good amount of time. The other one that looks like it might take some time this week is our discussion on the dog park. I believe, Steve, this is planned on being near the train station.
Well, I think there's several sites that have been talked about. We kind of have a informal dog park right now, which is behind the South Acton Fire Station, excuse me, that that there's some mini soccer fields there that people have used as a dog park. I think there's been some impetus by some citizens in town that'd like to see a more formal park, perhaps fenced in, have water for dogs, etc. So one of the recommendations that's been made to the Board of Selectmen is perhaps putting a committee together to study the issue, whether that's the most appropriate site or if there's some other town-owned land around town. Dogs I've always found very, very emotional issues, when we deal with them. So, I'm sure we'll have a pretty good turnout with a lot of folks probably wanting a dog park. So I think the board will have to think about whether they want to have a committee to study it, and the primary thing will be the location and things like that. So I think it will be a hotly debated item on Monday evening for sure.
And so I guess the next item on the agenda is going to be talking about a conservation restriction for property on Arlington Street. This is the same property that was planned to be the senior center, although that ended up not really working out. It's a very large property, most of which is not developable. There's only a very small developable area. And regardless of whether or not the selectmen think this restriction is a good idea, really the purpose of the discussion is more to decide whether or not we bring it to town meeting, because any restriction such as this would require town meeting approval. And so, yeah, that's sort of what we're doing with that item. I don't know if, Steve, you want to add anything?
The town acquired the property in 1962, and the primary reason it was acquired was for a potential site for a new school. And obviously, when we went through the regionalization issue a couple years ago, it was decided that property was probably best left with the town. So as you said, we looked at it for a senior center. I know some of the neighbors objected to that location, and they're the ones that have kind of been talking about perhaps a conservation restriction on the property. So one thing that could happen, and the selectmen can certainly talk to the neighbors on Monday night, is they could put a citizen petition article for annual town meeting, which only takes 10 signatures to do that, or the board could just put it on themselves or whatever. So, we may have some people that want to discuss that maybe, we still need to deal with affordable housing, so maybe, there could be some kind of limited affordable development there or whatever. So, I'm not sure how controversial this will be, but I'm sure there's going to be certainly some interested parties there.
All right, and I guess the final agenda item is our talking about withdrawing from SMURA.
Yeah.
And this is related to, of course, our desire to go with a new ALS system, a different way that we handle emergency response. We need to give our current association, SMURA, some notice that we're going to be undergoing sort of a new methodology for this. And I guess, Steve, I assume you would have some stuff to add, more information.
Right. Well, just this is kind of by way of background and history. Back in 2009, February 14th to be specific, Emerson Hospital basically got out of the advanced life support business. They provided the paramedic service for all the surrounding towns. So all the communities got together and formed the Central Middlesex Emergency Response Association and hired a paramedic service out of Cambridge to kind of run the advanced life support, which is a little different than the basic service that the town runs right now. A paramedic can do a lot more things medically than a emergency medical technician, and they can run lines, they can run all type of things on a patient. So that started in '09, and part of the agreement was that if a town wants to withdraw from this agency, the community has to give the agency 6 months' notice prior to the beginning of the next fiscal year. So since our next fiscal year is July 1, we would have to give them notice before January 1. And as many folks may recall, that at our last town meeting, we approved a contract with our fire union that provided for the town going to advanced life support and putting on our own paramedic service. And part of the reason for that is we feel that if we provide our own service, we can improve the response times, because obviously when somebody needs a paramedic, it's kind of a higher, more critical stage of medical emergency than a basic would require. So since we are now geared up to perform our own advanced life support in July, we're asking for the board to do the vote so we can notify SMERA and that we can move forward in implementing our own advanced life support.
All right, and so I guess that covers the majority of the agenda. You know, there's, and then you know, we look forward to seeing you on Monday evening if you attend the meeting.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks, Chingsung. And once again, this has been Acton Agenda, and the Selectmen's meeting will be 7 p.m. on Monday, December 5th. And thank you for watching.